All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. Now, as I continue my conference by conference breakdown of the upcoming 2024 college football season, it is time right now to talk about the American Athletic Conference. And since its inception in 2013, of course, took the place of the old Big East, if you will. No conference this side of the Pac-12 has taken it on the chin like the American Athletic has due to conference realignment. Now, since the AAC opened for business back in 2013, six of those original members have moved on to bigger paydays, primarily in the ACC or the Big 12. Founding American Athletic Conference Commissioner Mike Oresco hung on as long as he could, but he decided to retire after the last academic year. Now, in Oresco's place steps Tim Pernetti, who will look to keep this league afloat. But with all of this uncertainty off of the field, who has what it takes to win this league this fall in football? You look at last year's American Athletic Conference, and um, you look at it, and the conference champion is no longer there. We're talking about SMU. The Mustangs are now in the Atlantic Coast Conference. Okay. You look at the top four teams, though, overall from the American Athletic Conference. And it's one of those where between the teams that finished 1 through 4 last year in the American, you only had 3 losses because during the regular season, both SMU and Tulane went undefeated. UTSA only had 1 loss, and then Memphis had 2 losses. So if you're Tulane, okay, and I'm going to touch on them in a minute, and if you're UTSA and if you're Memphis and you're saying, okay, well, SMU ain't there anymore, that's one less team you got to worry about theoretically. But then Tulane has a lot to replace as well. And I'm going to touch on that in a very brief moment. I mean, you look at, I'm going to get back to UTSA right now. And for the Roadrunners, that loss to Tulane in their final game, and I think it was a semifinal, if you will, for the American Athletic Conference last year. But that loss in their final regular season game was all that prevented the Roadrunners from getting to the conference championship game. But this time around, is UTSA the team to beat in the American? Got a strong running game with Junior Kavorian Barnes toting the rock. Okay. You've got 4 seniors and a junior on that offensive line. And this is a UTSA team, excuse me, that if you're going to go out there and beat them, you better pack a lunch because this team brings it every single game. Okay. You look at those Memphis Tigers, and this is going to be a very fun team to watch. You've got senior quarterback Seth Henigan. To me, he's an offensive player of the year candidate for this conference. Then you look at the wide receivers that he's throwing the football to, the likes of Rock Taylor and Demir Blankumsey. Phenomenal kids that can get it done. And I think they're going to light it up in this conference once again this year. Also, keep an eye out for this Tigers defense led by junior outside linebacker Chandler Martin, while Memphis also has 7 starters on the defensive side of the ball that are seniors. Now, for Florida Atlantic, Tom Herman is looking to get things turned around, especially here in year number 2 for him. Little overwhelming for the Owls last year. They went 4-8, and I want to see if they can improve off of that. And of course, they finished on a sour note as they lost 5 of their last 6 as well. Florida Atlantic, they have not had a winning season since 2020, but I really want to see what type of improvement they could have from year 1 to year 2 under Tom Herman. You got veteran outside linebacker Jackson Ambush, and honestly, for a linebacker or for a defensive player, period, for a football player, period, he has the perfect last name of Ambush. Okay. Then you look at Tulane, and I mean, we saw Tulane really step it up in 2022. They won the American. Of course, they knocked off USC in the Cotton Bowl that year, and they had an opportunity to repeat as conference champions last year and just fell a little bit short. But the success of Tulane, which is to be expected, resulted in them losing their head coach, Willie Fritz, to Houston. Those are big shoes to fill because this man turned around one of the worst programs in college football. Okay. So now you're bringing in former Troy head coach, John Sumrall, to try to keep the ship going for the Green Wave. You got former Oregon quarterback Ty Thompson. You still got a strong running game with running back Makai Hughes, arguably, in my opinion, the best ball carrier in the American. You still got a strong defense if you're Tulane with linebackers Jesus Mercado as well as Tyler Grubbs. And then that secondary, led by strong safety Bailey Despiny, as well as up front on that D line with defensive tackle Patrick Jenkins. For me, some key games to watch and pay attention to this year in the American. The month of November, for me, I think is going to be very telling for this conference as they look to get that automatic bid, or the winner at least looks to get that automatic bid for the group of five to the college football playoff. November 2nd, you've got Memphis traveling to UTSA. Huge game. Okay, on the 30th of November, you got UTSA at Army. And then for me, another big one in November on the 28th, you've got Memphis traveling to Tulane. All three of these games, I think, could go a very long way in determining who wins the American Athletic Conference this year. So for my money, you look at this league, I think Charlotte and East Carolina, they're gonna have their hands full, as will Temple and Tulsa. It's gonna be interesting to see how Army fits into the mix in this league. What is Rice gonna do? Navy, I think is just like floating up and down, and the same thing could be said for South Florida. I think UAB is an improving program, as is North Texas. But I think at the end of the day, I think this conference, as far as winning it, it's going to come down to Memphis, UTSA, and Tulane. Even without Willie Fritz, I still think Tulane is one of the better teams in this league. But when it's all said and done, I'm going to give my nod to Memphis to go out there and win this conference. I think, in my opinion, I think Seth Henigan is the best quarterback in this conference. I gotta love Memphis's offense. I love what they're doing defensively. And with that said, I'm gonna pick the Tigers to win the American Athletic here in 2024. So, folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank all of you for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. I want to take this time out to thank all of you fine folks out there for tuning in. And if you haven't already, please feel free to subscribe to this channel. Now, if you're on the X, formerly known as Twitter, please feel free to follow me at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it will be my pleasure to follow you right back. There's also the sports discussion group on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365. Now you can check it out. Drop a line and be a part of one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. Also, be sure to check out the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast tomorrow, as I will continue my conference by conference breakdown for the upcoming college football season. This time, it's going to be all about the Mid American. So, folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, my name is William Martin. I am signing off. And I'm saying thanks once again for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. Be well, everybody.